Good day, Africa, and welcome to another exciting edition of AAU Talks. And AAU Talks is brought to you by the Association of African Universities. And I said this is a very special edition because we are coming to you all the way from Mombasa, Kenya, where AAU is partnering with PASGA for the Pedagogical Leadership Annual Convening and the MRPP project here in Mombasa. And we have a special session for you today. But before we go into our discussion, we'll go for a short break. When I return, I will let you know my guest and the subject for discussion. Stay tuned.
One of the universities set up in our pre-independence era, the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. Our international reputation has and continues to soar as a reference point in matters of science and technology, research and education. We believe that the future belongs to those who have sound technology acumen.
I love USD.
I love KNUST.
Welcome back from the break. If you just tuned in, you are watching AAU Talks, and AAU Talks is brought to you by the Association of African Universities, and we are live from Mombasa, Kenya. And today, because it's a special edition, we have Joseph Hoffman, and Joseph Hoffman is a team leader of SPHEIR. Most of you may not have heard of SPHEIR before. So SPHEIR is Strategic Partnership for Higher Education, Innovation and Reform. We are going to look at higher education in general in Africa and also some key projects that are being supervised or implemented by SPHEIR. You are welcome to AAU Talk.
Thank
Joseph.
you, Kwesi. It's a pleasure.
Great. Joseph, I know this is not your first time in Africa.
No.
Great. So can you tell us something about yourself and then SPHEIR as well?
Well, sure. I mean, I've probably most recently in the past 15 years have been involved in the African research space and higher education space. As I mentioned to you before, I was part of the founding of the Partnership for African Social and Governance Research and have done work there in the Master of Research and Public Policy program and a variety of other training activities with higher education institutions across the region. Currently, as you said, I lead the SPHEIR program, which is the UK's competitive grant fund that supports higher education, innovation and reform around the world, essentially. I mean, there are 9 large-scale projects similar in scale and complexity to the PEDAL project, Pedagogical Leadership Project. Of that 9, 7 of them cover sub-Saharan Africa.
Okay.
So there's quite a range. It was a very competitive process. In fact, I think our second call for proposals was still open at the time of the AAU's anniversary conference at which I spoke. And over the 2 calls, we've had almost 300 proposals from around the world, from which 9 projects were selected. So you can appreciate the interest and the competition. So broadly speaking, our interest is to support, I shouldn't say our interest, the UK's Department for International Development, which finances SPHEIR. Their interest has always been to support reforms that touch on quality, relevance, access, and affordability of higher education. But recognizing that not every project is going to emphasize all of those to the same extent. And it wanted to create a grant fund that would be somewhat flexible and respond to opportunities as good proposals arose. So I represent a consortium called the SPHEIR Fund Manager, which is led by the British Council and includes PricewaterhouseCoopers, PwC, and Universities UK International. So we manage the SPHEIR program on behalf of DFiD. So we manage the competition, the selection, and now with all of these 9 projects operational, we work closely with them, help connect the dots, because many projects, in fact, the pedal project that we're here as part of this workshop, it has people from African universities who are involved in other SPHEIR projects. So I would say pedal is somewhat unique in that it has a very particular focus on strengthening pedagogical skills. So strengthening the way in which people teach and providing a kind of exposure to a diversity of approaches. And it's not about redesigning degree programs in the first instance, which other projects tend to focus on. So it is unique in that respect. But just to give you a sense of the variety of the portfolio, north of us in Somaliland, there's a very, very interesting project that's focused on higher education in the health sector. Doctors, nurses, midwives. That involves Somaliland universities and teaching hospitals, King's College London, and other partners.
So that doesn't mean that in Somaliland they have that special need. That is why you are focusing on the health professional.
Well, I think first of all we were responding to a proposal. So we didn't go out to look for health proposals, but as you know, as a Ghanaian, this health sector occupies a huge area of attention for Ghana's government, as it does in almost every other country. Health and education tend to be the biggest areas of expenditure. So that partnership, that collection of organizations working on those issues has been around for a long time. And so they are somewhat similar to the pedal project in that the collaborating universities and PASCR had been in a relationship for a while, and they used the opportunity of SPHEIR to branch into something new and innovative.
So let's look at the uniqueness of pedal. I know you've been in the higher education space for some time, so you know the relevance of pedagogical leadership. But amongst all the proposals that you received, what made the pedal so exceptional and unique for Africa?
Well, I think several factors. One is connected to the point I said earlier, where the partnership and the activities weren't new. So pedal, PASCR, through this collaboration with a group of universities, had developed the Master of Research and Public Policy program, which was also supported by DFiD. And so it developed these pedagogical approaches as part of that initiative. So what it was doing was coming forward with a proposal that said, look, we have a very tested approach to strengthening pedagogy that we know works, and we've seen this in action. What we would like to do now is to broaden its utilization and in fact explore how it can be applicable and valuable not just in the social sciences but in other academic disciplines as well. So that was an attractive element. You know, the players knew each other. It was scaling up something that was already piloted and tested and being implemented. And there are a few other SPHEIR projects that had similar characteristics that sort of set them out a bit more than others.
All right. So in terms of higher education, innovation and reform, apart from Pedal and the Somaliland projects that you have, what are the key projects that you look out for? What are the key issues that SPHEIR and DFiD they are interested in supporting on the continent?
We tried to resist the temptation to be prescriptive in advance.
That's great.
Oh, we want a project that will do this. We want another project over here that will do that, and let the ideas come to us.
All right.
So the result of that is a lot of diversity, but some degree of continuity in approach. So for example, there's another project in Kenya, Leadership for Education in Africa.
Okay.
I didn't get that name right, but it's the short form is LEAP.
Okay.
And it's piloting a very innovative student financing scheme that operates on a not-for-profit basis and targets academically qualified but financially disadvantaged students being able to access university. Other projects are focusing on redesigning specific degree programs, for example, chemistry and pharmacy undergraduate training. The Sierra Leone partnership is focused on transforming the entire national system of education, higher education, into one that's more outcome-based and very strongly rooted in the quality assurance framework.
Okay.
We have another project that operates in East Africa that is really exploring how it's a collaboration of universities to share their scarce teaching resources by taking selected courses and putting them on a blended learning format and using them across national boundaries. That's very innovative. Another project, TASIA, is testing how one can look at picking specific courses in degree programs and enhancing how those courses are taught so that they bring in strong elements of critical thinking and problem solving, and so that they can make a difference in terms of graduates' employability without necessarily completely redesigning an entire degree program.
Great. So then let's look at the strategic direction of SPHEIR for Africa. What do you envisage to achieve as an institution in terms of your funding and support for Africa? Can we say that SPHEIR wants to achieve these strategic indicators in terms of African higher education? That is how and why you support.
Well, that's a very good question, Kwesi. We tend to look at this in two respects. One is that every project, including the ones that aren't in Africa, we want those projects and the partnerships themselves want to achieve what we call systemic impact. By that I mean that the particular innovations that they're putting in place will actually become embedded in the institutions in which they're involved throughout the institution. And it's the sustainability of effect that's most important, not necessarily whether the partnership is sustained or whether funding is necessarily sustained. Can they take these innovations and build support, get them adopted because people think that they're valuable and making a difference? And that's what we call effectively systemic impact. Excuse me. There are, however, a few projects that go maybe a step beyond that to what we call system level impact, HE system level, where what they are trying to do will in fact transform the entire national higher education system in the country they're targeting. The Sierra Leone program I mentioned is a good example of that, because virtually every university, the national qualifications body, the accreditations body, the Tertiary Education Commission is involved. So, if that project is successful, as we all hope that it will be, it will break new ground that touches on every university, every member of the faculties of those universities, and all of their students, regardless of the discipline.
Okay, so what do you make of the higher education space in Africa vis-a-vis the European or the UK-based universities? When you are to do a cross-study or to give us what exactly is lacking in Africa, what are the key things that you're able to share with us?
Well, let me be clear that my own view is that I certainly don't view I certainly don't view the higher education system in Africa, or the dynamics of that higher education in Africa, as more of a problem than it is elsewhere. Okay, higher education is a very challenging, complex area. There isn't a system in the world that doesn't have problems. Maybe the differences between Canada, where I come from, or the UK, or other European or even Asian systems, is that, you know, Africa's, in different countries, you have unique challenges, you know, whether that's financing, whether that's dealing with the explosion of private higher education and finding a way to balance sort of oversight and quality assurance across both a public and a private system. Some countries face much more fundamental resource challenges or security challenges, etc. And people are trying to do the best they can. So I think that there's some broad things that make a difference. One of them is exactly what Petal's trying to do. You don't necessarily need to have all of the comparatively well-endowed apparatus of a UK or US university to do good teaching.
Sure.
You know, you just need to be creative and expose people to different pedagogical approaches that they can apply in their current context and their current environment. So it's for us, it's responding opportunistically, you know, where that is possible. And some SPHEIR projects do so across national boundaries, like Petal. It's not targeted on a specific set of universities in one country. It's targeted on a set of teaching staff, you know, from multiple disciplines across multiple countries.
Okay. You know, earlier I asked a question concerning the scope of SPHEIR, but then I still would want to find out what are the no-go areas, what are the things that, because I'm very much sure that some institutions, universities would want to be part of or writing proposals for the next call or something. What are the areas that, even though you operate from a broader perspective, what are the areas that are not in line with SPHEIR's vision or mission or strategic operation?
Well, it's first of all, I wouldn't want to predict what a future SPHEIR round, if there is one, because that is really up to the Department for International Development to determine, and they'll make that decision in due course. And to some extent, they will decide to whoever manages that fund. It may be us, it may be someone else. They may decide they want a particular focus. They want a particular subject area focus, or you know, who knows. So that remains to be seen. But there are some no-goes in the sense that there are things that we were clear that we weren't interested in supporting in SPHEIR. So we didn't accept proposals that were about research and about building research capacity, not because that isn't important, but because the opportunities to access research funding for research and research capacity already exist. What was lacking was a focus of attention on the teaching role of universities.
All right. So we want to go for a short break, and when we return, we want to look at the pedal and the way forward for pedal. Viewers, if you just tuned in, you are still watching AAU TV and specifically AAU Talks brought to you by the Association of African Universities. We are streaming live from Mombasa, Kenya, where AAU is partnering with PASGA to host the annual convening of the Pedagogical Leadership Session. Stay tuned. We'll go for a short break. We'll be back.
Are you a fresh graduate from senior high school or a mature applicant? Thinking of a university to enroll in Ghana? Is it possible to get a university of high moral and discipline standard? Then look no further than the Presbyterian University College Ghana, where we believe in holistic education. We train the head, heart, and hands. We are a Christian university accredited by the National Accreditation Board Ghana and affiliated to the University of Ghana, Legon, KNUST, and University of Cape Coast. We offer instant employable programs such as physician assistantship, nursing, mathematics, rural and community development, environmental and natural resource management, business administration, social studies, business studies, information and communication technology, business economics, agribusiness, with experienced, innovative, and disciplined lecturers to take care of students' needs in a conducive environment. Our campuses are located at Okuru Abetifi, Ekuapem Ekuropong, Asante Achim, Tema, and Kumasi. Wondering how to apply to the school? It's simple. You should have an entry requirement of WASI A1 to C6, SSSCE A to D, HND holder, GBC, and ABC holder. Mature applicants should be 25 years and above. Apply by purchasing an e-voucher at 100 Ghana Cedi from the following banks: Agricultural Development Bank, GCB Bank, EcoBank, HFC Bank, Prudential Bank, Unibank, Universal Merchants Bank, and Fidelity. Buy forms using Visa or MTN mobile money by visiting the school's website at www.presbyuniversity.edu.gh. Application forms may also be obtained at all college campuses, the Presbyterian Church of Ghana Head Office, Osukoku Hill, and all PCG offices throughout the country. Now you can walk confidently in the job market thanks to Presbyterian University College Ghana. Call us or visit our website for more info.
Welcome back from the break. You can just join us through our social media platforms, Association of African Universities on Facebook and AAU_67 on Twitter. Keep your comments coming. We are hosting Joseph Hoffman, and we are talking about SPHEIR in Africa and then in general as well. So before we left for the break, we had wanted to look at the way forward for PEDAL, and I must congratulate you for that good and great initiative for African higher education. And I'm saying so because on our continent we have a lot of academics who do not have that pedagogical leadership or background or the skills. They may have the subject matter, but some of them do lack the skills, the strategies in teaching. So this is a very great project, but my concern is how do we cascade the PEDAL? There are over 1,000 universities in Africa, which ideally it would be very wonderful that realistically more than half will get to know about the good news that is happening in PEDAL. Let me ask you directly from you, how do you think we will be able to cascade PEDAL to ensure that by 2025, at least we have 60% of the academics on the continent having that kind of background to transform higher education in Africa?
Well, you've asked the what used to be called the $1 million question when I was a kid. Yeah. So I think in a way, PEDAL is tackling it surprisingly quickly, in the sense that the number of universities and the teaching staff that it's reaching is multiplying, even within the limited time frame since the project started, and will multiply more. So an approach that involves that multiplier effect is probably essential and is clearly within their target sites. So, and that's exactly what this workshop is about, in the concept of training of trainers. So how do you get a cadre of people, not just in the continent, but a cadre of people in different countries
Yes.
who are able to train others in this suite of pedagogical skills. And going a step beyond that as part of the cascade, how do you do that at the level of individual universities? And inescapably, how do you set that up so it happens in a way that is not completely dependent on external financing, and which is a very important point. And if you look last week, was it last week or maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago, there was a huge workshop at the University of Ibadan for Nigerian teaching staff. Now, PEDAL, obviously using SPHEIR resources, assisted by sending its resource people. But the event itself and the time of the teaching staff who were present was all supported
by the university,
by Nigerian universities, and they did so because they saw the value. So I think that approach of a multiplier effect is one. I think that the other is, and again, I think this is starting, from what I've seen, it's starting to become part of the discourse, is the conversation that happens at individual country levels with ministries, with bodies like the Commission for University Education in Kenya, maybe the one in its counterpart in Uganda, and the other countries. About how to give greater credence to the efforts of teaching staff to deliver excellence in their teaching. And as the AAU knows very well, the university environment, the incentive structures, the recognition structures have not been weighted towards the actual delivery in the classroom. They've been weighted towards research. It's not that is not important and shouldn't continue, but I think exploring how to balance that. Because there are teaching staff in universities, whether they're professors or lecturers, who they may be very gifted researchers and maybe less gifted teachers. And the reverse is also true. There are people who are really gifted teachers, and many of them you see here at this workshop, and maybe they're great researchers, but maybe they're not, and they shouldn't be kind of disincentivized if their gifts really lie on the teaching side.
Okay. So one of the key things that came, I think I asked a very burning question yesterday, which had to do with the fact that, do you think that we should go back to the formal system where we had teaching academics and research academics? Do you think we should?
I mean, first of all, those are choices that national systems and universities themselves make for themselves. And I would be the last person in the world to suggest that a university that wants to aspire to be a research university shouldn't do so. But the reality is that universities of any kind teach and do research. And I think maybe this is the third area where PEDAL has potential, and that's that in some ways it's ironic that someone can find themselves in a university as a teacher, as a lecturer, and have arrive at that place with almost no experience or training as an educator. Okay? That if they're fortunate, they got exposed to a really good role model in their own academic experience as a student. But doctoral programs don't really pay much attention to preparing people as educators. And so you have a few people, including a few people at this workshop, who also came out of the teaching system in secondary or primary level, and they got way more training as an educator than their counterpart sitting next to them, who just arrived at teaching as a after their PhD or as part of their trajectory from master's to doctorate.
Yeah. No, I made that assertion because realistically, from our point of view, because of the publish or perish syndrome, we tend to have much more of the academics focusing on research
Yes.
than the teaching.
Yes.
Some universities, you find the lecturers kind of shedding off that load to their teaching assistants, and they go to the lecture hall once in a while they are focusing on research, because that is where the credit is in terms of their promotion. What do you think we must do to correct some of these manners? We know research is important, but teaching, like we have already established, is equally essential. How do we balance the two in terms of promotion and anything that has to do with higher education?
Yeah, I think it's part of the solution there involves universities in concert with, say, a national accreditation body, giving perhaps more formal recognition to excellence in teaching and to accreditation. So, for example, this morning we handed out certificates for those who have invested a considerable amount of their personal time training their colleagues in pedagogical skills and developing those skills themselves in order to train their colleagues. And I mean, it was great to see a certificate, but it's not the same thing as it isn't a certificate that necessarily carries yet a level of recognition that is acknowledged or.
Okay, great. So how will we know that we have arrived as pedal, or how will we be able to recount our success stories? Is there any strategic monitoring, evaluation, and learning across the process to know that we have achieved ABC? How do we tell our stories? How do we measure our result? How do we know that we have achieved?
Well, I think in two ways I'd answer that. One is that the SPHEIR program has its own kind of conceptual framework, its theory of change, its whole monitoring, evaluation, and learning system that is primarily intended to accommodate the diversity of partnerships that are going on and provide some evidence that this collection of innovative programs is having some impact. But within each project, like PEDAL, they have their own monitoring, evaluation, and learning, their own theory of change, their own mechanism for setting targets and measuring success, their own thinking around what we call summative evaluation as they reach the end of the grant, and their own learning questions that the answers to which will tell them and tell all the participating universities, we've been doing this set of things, and we see very clear evidence of the impact that we expected to see in these areas. We see less clear evidence in these other areas we've tried. Why? And what do we need to do differently? How do we adapt? Those kinds of things.
Okay, so I have a surprise for you. And the surprise is that we have the conference for vice chancellors, rectors, and then principals or presidents of African universities in Egypt, and they would want to hear from you. What are the key messages that you have for African higher education? I think this is your camera, so you will deliver that message to them.
Okay. Well, first of all, congratulations on your convening. It looked like I was studying the concept note and, for the event, and it looked like a really valuable and important convening. I'm not sure I can convey messages to you that you don't already know about as vice chancellors and other senior officials, other than to continually try to encourage innovation in the quality of teaching and experimenting to find ways of strengthening the delivery role of universities. That's not to discourage the attention on research, but to perhaps explore a more balanced way of doing that, including quality assurance, of course, which is central to the delivery of academic excellence. So again, congratulations on the event, and I look forward to learning about the outcomes.
Thank you so much, Joseph, for joining us.
Thank you, Kwesi.
We wish you all the best as well. Viewers, we have been speaking to Joseph Hoffman, and he is the SPHEIR team leader, and they are the brain behind the pedagogical leadership, together with their partners behind the pedagogical leadership training that we are having here in Mombasa, Kenya. My name is Kwesi Sam. Thanks for watching.